A conversation with Pavel Mischenko on birth order and conflict, part of the series Manousso Musing with seasoned mediator trainer Dr. Barbara Manousso. That is our topic for today. Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast by InstantMediations.com, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube, the Instant Mediations app, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact-dependent. Hey everyone, this is Mac Pierre-Louis, attorney, mediator, and arbitrator, working throughout Florida and Texas.
And Natalia Ołowska-Czajka, advocate, mediator, and arbitrator from Warsaw, Poland.
And I'm Dr. Barbara Sunderland Manousso, mediator, arbitrator, and trainer for 30 years. This is the anniversary year. And I am based in Houston, Texas, and Newport, Rhode Island. Today, we are very, very pleased and honored to have as our guest of wisdom, Professor Pavel Mischenko, who is also a business consultant for helping companies, helping people who are at the mediation table, and especially like elder and adult care mediation, families who are in conflict. And a lot of the problem with their conflict rests on their birth order. They're good people, but birth order has programmed them to have a certain personality. And Pavel Mischenko, he brings a fresh new look and an insight that seems so obvious once you hear about it, but it is not always so forefront in our mind. So today, I welcome you, Pavel Mischenko. Thank you for being here. And tell us what birth order means and why you thought to study it, because it's a very interesting area, and it really is the elephant in the room when we're trying to do a lot of our family mediations. So tell us what brought you to this point and some observations on it, please. Thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me here. I was fascinated, I'm still fascinated how much our inside autopilot behaviors we have and how much they're driving our interaction relationships with other people. That we think as an adult that we are controlling everything, we are aware, but it's not true actually. There is lots of what they call subconscious behavior that comes from our childhood repetitive experiences, and could be childhood repetitive experiences in our families of origin or in our cultures of origin. So the more we understand what happened to us in childhood and how it programmed us without any choice or control on our part, and how it impacts my relationship with my wife, with my partner, with my parents, with my kids, that programming, if we are not aware about that programming, that becomes my autopilot. Like I just automatically act certain way, and I'm not aware about how much I trigger like stresses in other people. And I have more positive, very positive intentions, but then the outcome is negative. So the more I become aware how my history, individual history, and growing up as the oldest, the youngest, the middle, or the youngest in the family, how it impacts me in my significant relationships that I have now. It's critical because it prevents me from having this ongoing personality conflicts that sometimes I find myself into.
So you are saying that we are bringing to our lives things that we were taught in the childhood, or things that were suppressed in us in the childhood. So what is it? Is it only what they programmed us to, or what they took us away? So deprived us of, for example, oh, you cannot be joyful. You are the oldest one. You need to be serious. You need to take care of so is it also some deficit we are bringing, or only the positive programming?
Well, it's also, if I have done Tedex talk, about in 2014, you can find it on YouTube, and actually about I'm very fascinated because I think that people, they don't know me necessarily, but every day 60 to 70 people for the last 7 years, they keep watching this YouTube video. And I think it's because of the title. I have a title, it's called Your Birth Order. What is the blessing and a curse of your birth? Why your birth order is a blessing and a curse?
Oh, good.
So our birth order experiences, let's say, is the oldest. We had certain repetitive experiences. For example, we were asked by our parents to look after younger siblings. So we were empowered. We were giving power, and we had to exercise that power day after day after day because of the repetitive nature of that. It wasn't our choice by our analytical brain. It just went directly to our limbic brain where our habits live. So it became our autopilot relationship pattern that we are not aware about. And then as we grow up, we just keep automatically demonstrating that, basically manifesting that pattern. And we bring those patterns in our relationship, again, in our personal relationship with partners, spouses, friends, or, in the workplace with our children. So it's very important to be aware about blessing and a curse at the same time. Yeah, so thank you for showing that. My TEDx talk, when I talked about how birth order impacts us as the leaders, but also, for example, there I gave the good example, I thought at the end, when I discovered that I'm not very good active listener. So I always assumed that I'm pretty strong communicator and a good listener, till the moment when I started to actually studying active listening and training people in active listening. I have this technical formulas like you feel this and that because of that or when. So I started to, one day with my wife, I said, can I practice these technical formulas with you of active listening so I can tell people that I use it all the time? And so I did that in my conversation with Anna, and she started crying after 3 minutes. And I said, what's happening? I'm just doing active listening. She said, in 10 or 15 years of our marriage, you never listened to me like that.
Interesting.
And that was the aha moment of my blind spot. I'm the only child. So as the only child, I'm kind of assuming I'm perfect. Well, I'm expected to be perfect. But then I always thought that I'm a great communicator, but obviously I was not a good listener for my wife, and it's something that I have to remind myself and, do a better job. So to answer your question, it's always both, it's a blessing and a curse. So we have to be aware of good stuff, but also the challenging things that could create conflicts in our relationships.
Mac, you look like you had a question to ask. Please.
This is I don't want to steal your thunder. I don't want to steal your thunder, Dr. Manousso, because I think you were going to lead to, us being kind of guinea pigs for Pavel to diagnose a little bit.
Oh, you can't steal my thunder. Go ahead.
Well, the problem is with guessing sometimes. I don't advise usually to, when I do my workshops on birth order and leadership and relationships, I usually don't advise people to play like psychologists, like, oh, you look like all this, it's like, I think, you act, because people usually don't like that. I see it more as an instrument for self-reflection and self-understanding, sure. But also it's fun. It's fun sometimes when my take is usually, if somebody start driving you crazy, like there's something in other person's behavior that kind of pushing my buttons, then it's a good idea to check out, maybe it's birth order issue, like if somebody who is like too dominant, too like structuring, too pushy, then I say, well, there must be an oldest, but with you guys, it's an issue. It could be because you are so experienced with experienced people, like, it's people like you work for CIA, like agents or actors, because of your experience, sometimes it's difficult to guess. So you're quite challenging, but I could try, like, well, go ahead, Mac, go ahead.
No.
Beautiful smile that makes form hypothesis about you. Yeah, this is a wonderful book, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah. No, no. I have this up because I have been fascinated by this topic for a very, very long time. And so I
Yeah.
remember, I think it was on NPR, probably what, 15 years ago or 10 years ago. I was listening to it on a drive home one day, and I came across this article, well, this a news magazine discussion where they were talking about birth order, and they were actually interviewing the Dr. Kevin Lehman. So I go on Amazon and I got the book actually, and I started
Yep.
reading some of it because he said some things that were very fascinating, such as most former presidents were firstborn children, and I'm like, wow,
Because
there's a
of
pattern.
64%. Yep.
Yeah, and so I just found that interesting because I'll share about myself. I guess I'm the firstborn of my mom, but I'm the middle child of my dad, and so I can see different ways that yeah, I was called to be the responsible one. I had to be the one that led my other siblings, and they all kind of looked to me as the, I guess, heir in chief of what's to happen in our family. Once my parents passed, and so there's that dynamic. But at the same time, I take a step back when I put myself in the context of all of my siblings, all seven of us. And so I don't see myself, I'm kind of the follower to the eldest, the two eldest. And but because we were not in the same family, nuclear family, I should say, it's a little tricky on I guess finding who I am. But I don't know if you deal with that as well, where a
Oh, yeah.
person might be two. There might be two different generations.
Uh, I I think a confusion about birth order, they use biological fact or chronological fact, and they say that if you're oldest, you should have these traits. If you're middle, you should have these traits, particular traits. The way I look at that more as a psychological, what was some psychological repetitive experience that you had in your childhood? Like in your case, would be your oldest with your mom, yeah, and then you ended up in a blended family with a middle position. So psychologically, you had sometime repetitive experience as oldest, but then you start having like moving different countries, start speaking different language, so you
Yep.
ended up with two languages. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So if again, the bosshabits.com, this assessment tool that I have online, it catches our combination of our psychological behaviors, habits that we develop in our childhood based on our individual unique situation. So it's not only like oldest, you are this, young, or like I'm the only child, so you must be this. Well, I have this, but then my parents who are oldest, I have some of their oldest because, we imitate. So this is model. It helps us. I think that encourages us to look at our childhood as a source of understanding, of enlightenment. So for some of our behavior, so the more we understand our own history, the more in control the more we can understand our relationships now and be more happy in life, have a more happy relationships. For example, when I developed this in 2014, this tool, helping to understand those birth order experiences in our childhood, how they impact us as an adults, it helped me to understand my wife. I made a mistake in my life. After 24 years, I divorced my wife. And then, after 6 years of being apart and studying my personality, I realized that she's only child too. So I totally miscalculated her responses. Like when I thought about our relationship before, I totally misread the way how she loved me and what I expected love. But then when you understand personalities, when you understand that history, you can appreciate and make it work for you. So we got remarried, 7 years ago. We are the happiest couple ever.
Oh, nice.
And we are continuing now we have like 40 years of being together. So anyway, so this is a good tool. This is a very good tool. But can I just, so with Barbara, I think that my assumption, you guys, if you're in a podcasting, you're trying to help people to get enlightened, educated. So you must
Yes.
be like in a firstborn, like the people who are caring for other people. So in that sense, so Barbara, I thought that would be the closer to oldest probably, and then Natalia's too. I would go for more firstborn, unless she has a older sister and she's a younger sister. That sometimes two sisters because of that competition, but I would go more for the older ones in the family with only child. I mean, something like that. So that was so. Natalia, can you I'm just curious about it.
Because this is a topic that interests me a lot, and I used to
Yes.
be a scout leader. So I was actually bringing a lot of children in groups. And by the way, Pavel, you understand what I'm saying, right? When I so ever since I was 16, I was a scout leader, and I was having a lot of children around that I needed to
Leadership, yeah.
manage, and I needed to also adjust for their family problems. Sometimes that was really scary, because people who come to your group who do something with you, they
Sure.
bring all the baggage they have.
Exactly.
And this is also when I understood how important it is. No matter what you do with people, you are bringing something to them, but also you are taking something, you are learning. So I was learning about their family systems. I think that was also an interesting lesson to me, to do family law, which is what I am now doing. But this is also what happened in my own life. My parents were happily married for 27 years. I am their first child. But when I was about 10, I learned that my father is divorced and has 3 other children. And my oldest brother is 74 now. So he's very, very much older. He lived in a different country. Actually, he lives in the US. And we didn't have any close relationships ever. So I have the awareness that I have 3 other siblings, among them one sister who has PhD in biology, but we have never been growing under the same roof.
Together.
So
Yeah.
we have awareness of each other. We
Yeah,
can
yeah, yeah.
in a social environment, but it's not a very strong bond that will.
Yeah.
Although I can tell you that, well, and I think that might be something that will make everybody think. I know it's about personal things on the podcast, but personal experience is always something that calls very much into people. I remember first time when I visited my brother. He lived in Chicago at that point. It was 1999, and that was my first one-to-one meeting with him. He was a grown-up businessman, a real estate agent, a very successful man. And I entered the room, and his wife was watching us, and there was something so special this very moment that he had tears in his eyes.
Yeah, wow. Well, it's it must be a very special meeting. I cannot even imagine. Wow. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, Professor Mischenko, bringing this back to the mediation and the legal area, and how this impacts the conflict management at the table, what tips or tools, and you talk about that you do have a tool because it's something that people need to self-realize from your boss leadership. And you've also written quite a bit as well. You have a book, you have contributed articles to conflict management, the DeGoyer organizational conflict management handbook. And you have brought this to the awareness of mediators and other professionals who are trying to balance the dynamics that are at the table. And especially when we have, as an example, elder and adult care mediation. This is outside of divorce, it's outside of child custody. It's when a family needs to make a decision, often for an elder. And so your area of expertise is so valuable in these scenarios. Can you give some tips and some formula perhaps on what people can be looking for to help that elephant in the room with these personality dynamics? Is there some wisdom that you can share?
Well, I would say a couple of things. It's very helpful to understand your own programming, like with the birth order, like where you are and what to again something like your blind spots, something that you do, how it impacts other people, and you're not aware, or your stressors. Like some people, like if you're a middle child and you have an oldest, like with a little bit dominant behavior, like maybe they can be perceived as a bullying behavior, it's like my way or highway. The middle children, they immediately react with defensive, like they become defensive, kind of passive. They're trying to leave. They don't like to deal with this person because of what they perceive as a bullying behavior, like too dominant.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you just become aware that what they like say oldest, when they do when the dominant, they're not aware and they have the most positive intentions as they do it for our situation. So that's just first to become aware of my own reactions, and the second, understand that sometimes people involved in this personality conflict dance, they do it automatically without any awareness. And when you're trying to bring it, if you understand this dynamic, then you bring it in the open and say, well, that's what we've been doing this for years in our childhood. How about we'll try to move on and we'll make a good decision, like more adult, understanding what's happening emotionally. Well, let's, come up what will be the best pragmatically in this particular situation. So understanding those two things about myself, my own reactions, but also understand the personality dynamic between people. And this particular tool gives this insight or gives this awareness that what in my experience, it lowers the tension, because we always assume that other person's behavior is somehow, like attacking us. There is some intention. In most of the cases, no, we are on autopilot in our relationship. We just be, exercising our autopilot behaviors like what we used to. And that's what triggers us. And we kind of ended up in war, but we don't even sometimes know why. So that awareness decreases the stress and helps us to make more rational and helpful decisions for all of us. I don't know if it's helpful.
That's very helpful. Where would somebody find the tool, and should a mediator get into a scenario with a family that is quite conflicted and they're just not able to move forward? And of course, as a mediator, the role is not to be a psychologist. We're not there to fix anybody, but sometimes it is helpful for people to understand themselves, and it softens them so they have that capacity to come back to the table and perhaps just to be mindful of that there is another dynamic going on as they try to address their conflict. Is there a place where they can get this tool?
Well, I mean, there are books, too, like we talk about the book of Birth Order by Kevin Lehman. Again, they can fill out this online assessment and to learn about their own personality and understand that. That I do workshops, for example, when again, I break people into their the groups, oldest, youngest, middle, and sometimes after this enlightenment that the people experience, connecting what happened to me in childhood and how it impacts me now. Like I remember one guy, youngest, he'll say, "Oh my God, I'm gonna call my oldest brother and apologize now for everything I've done." Sure. So there is some healing. That awareness brings healing and makes it less subjective kind of conflict. And then we can say, well, that's what have been happening psychologically, but let's take a look. How can we help each other now in a rational way? That's what I mentioned in St. Patrick's. I just push it sometimes, to the limit. I said, well, we can wait when somebody dies, and then we can figure out how to relate to each other, or we don't have to wait till there something terrible happens, and figure out how can we overcome those traumatic experiences. Like that happens between nations as well. Nations have some painful experiences, but now they have to move on and help each other. The same in families. But sometimes, unfortunately, like my mom, that brought my interest to some degree. She had a younger sister and two sisters, older and younger. She didn't talk to her for the last 20 years of their lives, which is very sad. I thought I was looking like, I wish I had a sister or brother as only child. But it's just sad when sometimes those strong emotions, they impact the way how we handle. But I guess I never had this help of mediators, people like you, who is trying to help to different aspects, managing the pragmatic things, but also at the same time help them to understand psychological dynamics, what's happening, and that awareness. Yeah,
absolutely fascinating. And so Pavel Mischenko, thank you so much for sharing your awareness and helping mediators realize that at the table, birth order is sometimes a barrier, or can be the helper and the inspiration for people to relook at the relationship. And you can't negotiate until everybody gets in the same space. And this is one more variable to help mediators. You can't fix the family, but what you can do is help assist the family to maybe have fresh eyes.
That's
so
right.
Pavel Mischenko, business consultant, boss leader, birth order. You bring a lot of wisdom to the table. Thank you for being our guest today on Manousso Musing.
It's a pleasure to be with you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing what you're doing.
Guys, until next time. Take care.
Cheers.